I invite you to immerse yourself in a whirlwind of incredible events, where the betrayal of a beloved wife turns out to be only the smallest problem in your life. My new author's story on the Purple Heart Stories channel, and support it with a like and subscribe if you like it. GHOSTS of Memory. Chapter 1 of Foreign Reflection. My name is James Harper, 38 years old, former captain of an elite commando unit, now an employee of military intelligence. My wife Emma is also from the military fraternity, a cryptographer, 35 years old, smart as the devil himself. At least, that's what they say. However, right now I woke up in a memory recovery clinic, completely disoriented. Doctors with professional smiles explained that I voluntarily agreed to an experimental procedure to erase painful memories after I caught my wife with a lover, so as not to do something stupid. But something went wrong. Instead of erasing a specific episode, I lost all memories of my wife during 7 years of marriage. Oddly enough, all my military skills remained intact. My body remembered what my mind had forgotten. When I returned home, a real shock awaited me. The woman who, as I understood from the doctor's explanations, was supposed to be my unfaithful wife, claimed that I was lured into the clinic by deception, that I was supposedly considered dead, and she was at my funeral. Now I'm stuck between two versions of reality, not knowing who to believe, my own erased memories or my own wife, who may have something to hide. 1. The first thing I felt when I came to my senses was the smell. Sterile hospital with a mixture of chemicals, not antiseptic, something more complex, artificial. Such a mixture always foreshadows trouble. In Iraq, before the bullet passed a millimeter from my heart, I also felt a strange smell. True, then it was a mixture of red-hot metal and gunpowder. Opening my eyes turned out to be more difficult than I thought. The eyelids seemed to be filled with lead. When I finally managed to do it, I saw a white ceiling, white walls, white sheets. The ward was flooded with cold, fluorescent light, which made my eyes itch. To the right of the bed was an apparatus monitoring my vital signs. Normal pulse, normal blood pressure. I was alive and apparently not injured. What am I doing here? Trying to get up caused instant dizziness. The world spun like a carousel and I collapsed back onto the pillow. How long have I been lying here? A day, a week, a month? An attempt to restore the chronology of events in my head caused a sharp pain. The last thing I remembered clearly was a briefing with Major Cain on a new security system. Then, a failure. A man in a white coat entered the door without knocking. Tall, thin, with a neat graying beard. A typical professor from a movie. All that was missing was glasses on a chain. He held a tablet in his hands. His eyes looked unnaturally large behind the glass of his glasses. "Ah, Mr. Harper, you're awake," he said in a tone in which professional goodwill was mixed with something else. Tension, fear. "I am Dr. Fisher, your attending physician. How do you feel?" His voice seemed familiar, although I was sure I had never met him before. A strange feeling of déjà vu, or maybe jamais vu, the perception of the familiar as unfamiliar. "Where am I?" My own voice seemed foreign to me, hoarse. "How long haven't I spoken?" "You are at the New Dawn Clinic," Dr. Fisher replied, approaching the bed. "A specialized medical center for special cases." "What other special cases?" I tried to sit down again, this time slower. The world was no longer spinning, but my head was still buzzing. The last thing I remember. "What exactly do you remember, Mr. Harper?" Dr. Fisher leaned towards me with professional interest. "This is very important for your further treatment." I closed my eyes, trying to concentrate. Images flashed like frames of a film, cut into pieces and glued together in random order. A briefing with Cain, shooting range, dinner in some restaurant, papers marked top secret, the face of a woman beautiful with intelligent brown eyes. Who is this? Why can't I remember her clearly? "I know who I am," I said slowly. "James Harper, captain of a special commando unit, former captain, transferred to intelligence after being wounded in Iraq. I remember my childhood, school, academy. I remember my service, but I hesitated, not wanting to admit memory lapses. A professional habit, never reveal weaknesses. But you don't remember your wife, Dr. Fisher finished for me, and something in his voice made me tense. How did he know? And why wife specifically and not, say, the last week before hospitalization? Mr. Harper, the doctor sat on the edge of the bed. His face took on an expression of professional sympathy. A month ago you agreed to an experimental procedure of selective memory erasure. What? I felt cold sweat appear on my back. What the heck? You experienced a serious psychological trauma, he continued, ignoring my reaction. You caught your wife with a lover, decided to kill them both, but at the last moment pulled yourself together. Fell into a depression so deep that you could not function normally. Feared that you would break down and fulfill your first thoughts, commit a tragedy. And after traditional therapy didn't help, you turned to us. His every word felt like a punch in the stomach. Emma cheated on me? I don't remember that. I hardly remember Emma at all, only a blurred image, a feeling of presence but no specific moments, no conversations, no touches. We tried to erase only this specific episode, Fisher sighed, but there was a complication. All your memories of your wife during the 7 years of marriage turned out to be inaccessible. We hoped it was temporary, that the memory would begin to recover, but he said something else about neuroplasticity, about the temporary cartography of memory, about recovery methods, but I wasn't listening anymore. Instead, I watched his hands. They trembled slightly as he flipped through the pages on the tablet. Watched his eyes. He avoided direct gaze. Watched the language of his body, tense shoulders, too straight back. Dr. Fisher was lying, or at least not telling the whole truth. I don't know why I was so sure of this. Maybe a professional intuition worked, honed by years of undercover operations. Or maybe the very fact that I trusted someone to erase my memory seemed so absurd that it didn't register in my head. I recommend staying in the clinic for another week for observation, Fisher finished. We could try another procedure to recover. No, I interrupted him sharply. I want to be discharged today. He clearly didn't expect such a reaction. For a second, his mask of a caring doctor slipped off, revealing something cold and calculating. But the moment passed, and he became professional and detached again. This is not recommended, Mr. Harper. Your condition. I'm fine. I threw off the blanket and put my feet off the bed. The dizziness returned, but I ignored it. Where are my clothes? Fisher looked at me for a few seconds, as if assessing the situation, then sighed and pointed to the locker by the wall. Your clothes are there, but at least let me write you a prescription. They will help you cope with possible complications. I nodded, seeing no reason to refuse. While he was writing the prescription, I quickly dressed. My things, jeans, a t-shirt, a leather jacket, looked clean and ironed. Too clean for the clothes of a person experiencing deep depression. I noticed a tiny black thread on the inside pocket of the jacket. An old army trick. I always sew one on to know if someone has been rummaging through my things. The thread was broken. Here, Fisher handed me a box of pills and instructions. Take one in the morning and one in the evening. If you start having headaches or disorientation, call this number immediately. He handed me a business card. I stuffed it into my pocket without even looking. Something told me that I definitely wouldn't be calling that number. Thank you, doctor. I put on a fake grateful smile. You've been a great help. When I left the clinic into the sun-drenched parking lot, I felt like a newborn seeing the world for the first time. Everything around seemed both familiar and alien. I knew what trees, asphalt, and cars were, but I couldn't remember how I got here, where I lived, where I was going. Fortunately, my wallet contained an address, and a strange, inappropriate gratitude to those who left me at least this hint. 2. The taxi driver, an elderly man with a TED badge, talked all the way about the weather, how long there had been no rain, about the impending drought. I nodded in the right places, focusing on the road, memorizing the route, noting all the turns. If my memory failed me, muscle memory and a sense of direction should help out. The house turned out to be exactly what the house of a successful intelligence officer with a beautiful wife should be. Two-story, with a well-groomed lawn in a decent neighborhood. Not too flashy, but not cheap either. Moderately ostentatious, moderately secretive. I paid the taxi driver and just stood in front of the house for a few minutes, trying to evoke some kind of emotional response. Is this my house? Did I choose these curtains on the windows, plant these roses in the yard, walk the dog down this driveway? Dog. Did we have a dog? Nothing, complete emptiness, as if I were watching someone else's life through glass. The keys were found in the pocket of my jacket, 3 keys on a ring with a keychain in the form of a miniature army tag. I took it in my hand. The tag chilled my skin, seemed familiar. The first glimmer of recognition in the whole day. I turned the keychain in my fingers. The tag was engraved with JH and EH always together, always connected. The lock gave way on the second try. I slowly opened the door, ready for any surprise. But the house greeted me with silence and the coolness of air conditioning. The interior decoration was stylish, but not pretentious. Light walls, dark furniture, minimal decor. On the right is a living room with a large sofa and a plasma TV. Straight ahead is a dining room with a wooden table for 6 people. On the left is a staircase to the second floor. Everything looked perfectly clean, as if the house had either just been cleaned or hardly lived in. I moved on, methodically examining room after room, as if clearing a building. Kitchen, modern, with an island in the middle and high bar stools. Study, a desk, a leather armchair, bookshelves. I memorized the location of exits, windows, possible shelters. A professional habit that I can't get rid of. Going up to the second floor, I found 3 bedrooms. The main one, with a large bed and 2 bedside tables, the guest room, almost empty, and the third, converted into a home gym with a treadmill and a set of dumbbells. But I was most interested in the photos. They were everywhere, on the walls, on the mantelpiece, on the bedside tables. Me and the woman who was supposedly Emma, in Paris against the backdrop of the Eiffel Tower, on some beach with cocktails in our hands, on a hike with backpacks behind us. At a wedding, me in a tuxedo, her in an elegant cream-colored dress. I picked up a wedding photo, peering into the woman's face. Chestnut hair to the shoulders, intelligent eyes, a slight smile. Beautiful, but not in the classic sense, rather interesting. The face of a person who will never be boring. I caught myself trying to remember her voice, her laugh, the touch of her hand. Nothing. James. I turned around sharply, instantly going into a fighting stance. The voice sounded like a gunshot in the silence of the house. She, the woman from the photos, was standing in the doorway of the bedroom. Her hair was pulled back in a casual ponytail. Her face showed shock, disbelief, and hope. She took a step forward, and it took all my composure not to retreat. James, oh my God, you're alive. She rushed towards me, spreading her arms for an embrace, but my body reacted faster than my mind. I stepped aside, raising my hand. She froze, lowering her hands, and pain flashed in her eyes. Sorry, I tried to soften the situation. I don't remember you. You don't remember, she frowned, then her face lit up with understanding. What did they do to you? What exactly do you remember? Her reaction was unexpected, straight to the point. What do you remember? As if she knew about my amnesia in advance. Dr. Fisher said that I voluntarily agreed to a memory erasure procedure, I said slowly, watching her reaction. To forget how I caught you with someone else. Her face changed, from sympathy to outrage, then to horror. What? James, that's a lie, an absolute lie. I never cheated on you. She shook her head and her hands involuntarily clenched into fists. They brainwashed you. God, it's even worse than I thought. She came closer carefully, as if approaching a wild animal. I allowed her to come closer, although my whole body tensed up. James, listen to me. A month ago you were kidnapped. People from an organization called Cerebrum. Everyone thought you were dead. Your car was found in the river, but the body wasn't found. Her voice trembled, but her eyes remained dry. I knew you couldn't just die. I was looking for you. The official investigation reached a dead end, but I didn't give up. She spoke so sincerely, so emotionally, but something in her story scratched my consciousness. Something was wrong. Why would they kidnap me? I asked, stepping back to better see her face. Because of the codes, she lowered her voice, although we were alone in the house. Secret military codes stored only in your memory. You were part of Project Black Phantom, a special government program where access codes to strategic weapons were implanted into the subconscious of several agents. None of you knew the full code, only a fragment, and didn't even suspect its existence. It sounded crazy, and at the same time, it explained my regular meetings with Cain, secret briefings, strange tests I was subjected to. Pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, but the overall picture was still blurry. Why did they let me go then? I asked the next logical question. She bit her lip, and this gesture seemed inappropriately theatrical to me. Maybe they already extracted the code. Or, she paused, they implanted dormant triggers into your consciousness, hidden commands that are activated under certain circumstances. My military intuition screamed danger. This woman knew too much for an ordinary cryptographer. Either she was at the highest level of access, or she wasn't who she claimed to be. Sorry, but I don't remember anything about our family life. At all. What's your name? I suddenly asked, watching her eyes. Emma, she blinked. Emma Harper, I'm your wife. Full name? Emma Catherine Harper, maiden name Weiss, she answered without hesitation, too quickly for a person who was caught off guard. We've been married for 7 years. We met during a joint operation in Berlin. I nodded, pretending to be satisfied with the answer. In fact, I just didn't know what else to ask. Without memory, I was like a blind man trying to fight an enemy he couldn't see. Sorry, I need time, I said finally, to get used to it. Of course, she stepped back, giving me space. I understand. It must be terrible not to remember your life. But I'm here, James. I'll help you remember. There was sincere concern in her voice. But with her right hand, she was gently stroking the thumb of her left, a gesture that I knew as a sign of tension and hidden lies. 3. It was one of the best days of my life, Emma said, pointing to a photo where we were standing against the backdrop of the Colosseum. You were so funny. You told me historical facts about gladiatorial fights all the way, and then admitted that you made up half of them on the go to impress me. We sat in the living room, sorting through photo albums. It was her idea to help me remember through visual images. It seemed logical, but it didn't work yet. The photos remained just photos, flat, two-dimensional, lifeless. And this, I pointed to a picture where we were standing with some elderly couple. My parents, she replied readily. Robert and Diana Weiss. Dad is a retired mathematics professor. Mom is a former English teacher. They live in Portland, Maine. We see them 2 or 3 times a year. Too detailed, I thought, as if she were reading a dossier. This whole process, looking through photos, stories about our supposedly shared life, reminded me of an interrogation. Only this time I was not the interrogator but the interrogated, and I didn't know the right answers. Tell me about the day we met, I asked, closing the album. Not the facts, but what you felt. This was a verification question. Facts can be memorized, emotions more difficult. She thought for a moment, and her gaze became detached. I was scared, she finally said. Not of you, but of the situation. My first experience in the field, my first real operation. I was sitting in this small room with interception and decryption equipment all on edge, and then you walk in. So, confident, calm, as if we were not in enemy territory but at a picnic. You looked at my monitors, poked your finger at one of the intercepted signals and said, This is it. It's different from the others. At first I thought, what a self-assured type, but you were right. Her face softened with memories, her eyes moistened. Then we talked all night, not about personal things, about tactics, ciphers, strategy, and it was the most intimate conversation of my life. She seemed to wake up and looked at me with hope. Do you remember anything? I shook my head. Her story sounded plausible, even sincere, but did it remind me of anything? No, absolute emptiness. What about my kidnapping? I asked, changing the subject. What exactly happened? You didn't come back from your jog, she looked down. Usually you run for an hour and a half at most. When 3 hours passed, I started calling. The phone is unavailable. I alerted everyone, the police, your colleagues. A day later, your car was found in the river, smashed with traces of an accident. But I run on foot. Why do I need a car? I interrupted her. She didn't bat an eye. You often drive to a park outside the city for a run. You said that there are fewer people and cleaner air there. A good answer, quick, logical, too good. How did you know it was cerebrum? Now she hesitated. I received an anonymous message a week after your disappearance, just coordinates and the name cerebrum. I checked. The coordinates are for an abandoned industrial complex. I passed the information to the FBI, but they didn't find anything, or pretended they didn't find anything. And you decided that this message was true, based on what? Intuition, she shrugged. Female intuition. This was the first truly fake answer. A cryptographer, an analyst, a cipher specialist, and suddenly female intuition. Doesn't add up. James, she suddenly changed her tone to a more intimate one. I know how it all sounds. Crazy, incredible, but it's true. I am your wife, and all I want is for you to be yourself again. She reached out and gently touched my cheek. The touch was supposed to be familiar, habitual, but it only caused discomfort. I stepped aside, pretending I needed to clear my throat. It's late, I said, looking at my watch. I guess I'll go to sleep. The day was eventful. Of course, she nodded, and disappointment flashed in her eyes. You lie down in our bedroom. I'll set up in the guest room for now, until you feel more comfortable. This was a smart move. Give me space, show understanding. Everything is like in a psychology textbook, or in a textbook for spies. Thank you, I smiled strainedly, and thanks for your patience. James, she stopped in the doorway, turning around. Whatever happens, remember, I'm always on your side. Such a phrase usually calms, but to me it sounded like a warning. 4. I cooked your favorite. Emma put a large plate of pasta on the table, sprinkled with seafood. Spaghetti with gifts of the sea Sicilian style. The aroma of the dish filled the dining room, garlic, white wine, fresh herbs, and seafood. Lots of seafood. Mussels, shrimp, squid. I froze. Something clicked in my brain. The first real glimmer of memory in the whole day. I'm allergic to seafood, I said, confident in my words. Emma froze for a moment. A fork with winding spaghetti hung in the air. What? No, you're not allergic, she laughed nervously. You love seafood. You always order them in restaurants. I definitely remember that I'm allergic to shellfish. Not fatal, but unpleasant enough. Rash, itching, swelling. I pushed the plate away. Sorry, but I'm not going to eat this. Oh, she looked genuinely upset. Sorry, I guess I was so nervous that I mixed it up. That's right, I love seafood. And you always order steak. A good attempt to save the situation. But a wife can't mix up her husband's allergies with whom she has lived for 7 years. It's like mixing up whether he is right-handed or left-handed, or what color his eyes are. It's okay, I tried to smooth things over. I'm not very hungry anyway. I can cook something else. She began to get up. No, you don't need to, I stopped her with a gesture. Let's just talk. Tell me more about us, about our life. She nodded, returning to her usual role as a storyteller with relief. What would you like to know? Our daily habits, I shrugged. Who gets up earlier? Who makes breakfast? Do we have any rituals, traditions? You're an early bird, she smiled. You always get up at 5, go for a run, then make breakfast. Usually an omelet or oatmeal with fruit. I join you around 7, we have breakfast together. On Sundays, the tradition is a late brunch with coffee and newspapers. You read the news, I do crossword puzzles. Everything sounded perfect. Too perfect, like a life from a commercial. Where are the quarrels? Where are the compromises? Where is real life with all its roughness? What about our disagreements? I asked. Do we argue about what? She thought for a moment. About politics sometimes. You're more conservative, I'm more liberal. About the distribution of household chores. You think I work too much and don't help enough around the house. She smiled slightly. About where to spend our vacation. You love the mountains, I love the beach. It sounded more realistic, but still too general, as if she were describing a typical married couple, not specifically us. What about children? Did we talk about children? Her smile faded. We tried 2 years ago, but I had a miscarriage. In the 11th week, she lowered her eyes. We decided to wait. First, I wanted to finish an important project, then you started preparing for a special operation, so we kept putting it off. If this was a lie, it was very skillful. There was real pain in her voice, her eyes moistened. Dinner continued in the same vein. I asked questions, she answered. About our first home, a small apartment in the suburbs. About our friends, mostly from military circles. About family holidays, usually quiet, just the two of us. After dinner, she offered to show me the house in more detail, to refresh my memory. I agreed, although I had already managed to explore almost everything myself. When we reached the study, she reached for the light switch and missed. Her hand searched for the wall in the wrong place before finding the switch. A trifle, an insignificant detail, but a person who has lived in a house for 7 years doesn't look for a switch by touch. Muscle memory works automatically. The list of inconsistencies was growing, and each new one strengthened my confidence. This woman is not my wife. 5. I woke up to the sound of a closing door. The clock on the bedside table showed 2:37 a.m. Before going to bed, I pretended to take a pill from the kit issued by Fisher, but actually threw it into the toilet. Something told me that these drugs were not intended to restore memory, but to maintain my medicinal fog. I slipped out of bed as silently as I was taught in special forces. I listened, quiet steps on the stairs, a barely audible creak of the floorboard, a rustle downstairs. Emma wasn't sleeping. I waited for the steps to fade away and left the bedroom. The house was plunged into darkness, but my eyes quickly adapted. Slowly, moving only when her steps drowned out mine, I went down to the first floor. A faint light shone from under the door of the study. I crept closer, pressed my ear to the wooden panel. Emma was talking on the phone, quietly, almost in a whisper, and not in English. Yes, he doesn't suspect anything. No, the memories are not coming back. I continue to observe. I understand that time is short. Russian, she was speaking Russian, fluently, without an accent, as a native speaker. Blood froze in my veins. Emma, my Emma, or the one who claimed to be her, was a Russian spy, or more likely an agent of Cerebrum, the organization she herself told me about. I wanted to burst into the study, press her against the wall, demand answers, but professional restraint won. It's better that she doesn't know that I know. This gave me an advantage. After listening to the end, I returned to the bedroom as silently as I had come, lay down in bed and closed my eyes, faking sleep. 10 minutes later, the bedroom door quietly opened. She was checking on me. I maintained an even breath, and soon the door closed again. I spent the rest of the night thinking, who was this woman? Where was the real Emma if she existed? Was she alive? And how could I restore my memory if it was the key to everything that was happening? I decided that I would start acting in the morning. Gather information, find allies, find out the truth. But for this, I needed to maintain the appearance of ignorance. To play the role of a husband disoriented by amnesia, trusting his wife. Zix. I'm thinking about going for a run, I said at breakfast, spreading butter on toast. Maybe physical activity will help my memory. Emma looked up from her coffee. Something like anxiety flashed across her face. Are you sure that's a good idea, after everything that happened to you? Dr. Fisher said that I'm physically healthy. I shrugged. And you yourself said that running is my usual morning routine. Yes, but, she bit her lip, maybe I'll go with you, just in case. I didn't expect that. But on the other hand, her presence could give me the opportunity to check her one more time. Okay, I agreed. Do you often run with me? Sometimes, she smiled. Usually on weekends when I don't have to rush to work. Half an hour later, we were already running along the sidewalk of the residential area. The morning was cool but sunny. We maintained a moderate pace, not too fast but not too slow. Emma was in good shape, kept up. During the run, I noticed a black SUV that passed us, then turned around and passed again. Tail, perhaps. I discreetly memorized the license plate number. Where does our route usually lead? I asked, turning the corner. To the park 3 blocks from here, then along the river and back. About 5 miles, she replied, slightly breathless. We ran to the park, made a circle around the perimeter. The SUV reappeared on the next street. Now I was sure we were being followed. The only question was, who? Cerebrum or someone else? On the way back, I suggested stopping at a small store. I need to buy water, I said, and maybe something for lunch. Emma agreed to wait outside, and I took advantage of the moment. In the store, in addition to water, I bought a disposable phone. I paid in cash, hid it in the pocket of my sweatpants. When we returned home, Emma went to take a shower, and I, saying that I wanted to sit in the backyard a little longer to breathe the air, went out with the new phone. Alex Mercer's number popped up in my memory as if on command. It's strange that I remembered him but didn't remember my own wife. Or maybe not so strange. I dialed the number, mentally preparing myself for any reaction. Ringing. 123. Mercer listening. A familiar voice came from the other end of the line. Alex, it's me, I said quietly. A long pause, then a strangled voice. James, this can't be. You're alive. Looks like it, I smirked. We need to meet as soon as possible. Oh my God, his voice sounded genuinely shocked. Everyone thought you were dead. I was at your funeral, damn it. A funeral without a body, I clarified. Yes, a closed coffin. They said the body was too. Well, you understand, he paused. James, what happened? Where have you been? Does Emma know? Emma, I paused. Yes, she knows, but I'm not sure she is who she says she is. What? Now his voice sounded confused. What are you talking about? Not over the phone. I looked around, checking to see if anyone was listening. Let's meet in Greenwood Park by the fountain in 2 hours. I'll be there, Alex said firmly. And James, damn, I'm glad you're alive. I hung up, took the battery out of the phone, and hid both parts in different places. Returning to the house, I found Emma in the kitchen. She was preparing lunch. How was the shower? I asked, pretending that I had just come in from the backyard. Refreshing, she smiled. Any plans for the day? I was thinking about going to the supermarket, buying groceries, I said casually. Maybe go shopping. I need to feel normal, ordinary. Do you want me to go with you? No, I think I should be alone. I tried to soften the refusal with a smile. To gather my thoughts, you know. She nodded, although anxiety flashed in her eyes. Control was slipping from her hands, and she understood that. Of course, she said finally. Just be careful and take your phone, okay? Of course. I smiled, planning a meeting with Alex, but inside me a determination was growing. I would find out who this Emma is, what happened to the real Emma if she existed, and who is behind all this. I would get my memory and my life back. Or I'll die trying. Chapter 2, Shards of Truth. 1. Alex Mercer was always punctual. This quality made him a good operative and a reliable friend. When I approached the fountain in Greenwood Park, he was already waiting for me, sitting on a bench, nervously tapping his fingers on his knee, occasionally looking around. Seeing me, he froze. His face expressed a mixture of shock, disbelief, and relief. "God, James," he whispered, rising, "it really is you." I put my finger to my lips and gestured for him to walk around. We moved along the alley, crowded enough to get lost in the crowd, but not so much that someone could overhear our conversation. "I was at your damn funeral," Alex said quietly, but his voice was tense. "Closed coffin, national flag, honor guard, the whole set for a hero, damn it." "So officially I'm dead," I stated, carefully watching his reaction. "Deader than dead. Car accident, your car went off Clayton Bridge into the river. The current is strong, the body wasn't found, but there was enough blood in the cabin for—" He cut himself off. "Sorry, it's strange telling you about your own death." We rounded the fountain and turned onto a side alley leading to the lake. "What about Emma?" I asked, getting to the main point. "I mean after my death." Alex frowned. "She was strange. At first, crushed by grief as expected. I went to see her every day for the first week, brought food, checked on her. Standard support program for a friend's widow." He fell silent, as if gathering his thoughts. And I nudged him. "And then about a week after the funeral, she changed. Sharply. New hairstyle, new style of clothes, even her way of speaking became different, more sharp, so to speak. Everyone blamed it on grief, on a way to cope with the loss. You know, people react differently." He hesitated, then looked me straight in the eye. "But now when you're here and say that you doubt her, damn it, James, do you think she's not her?" "I know she's not Emma," I said firmly. "At night I heard her speaking Russian on the phone. She doesn't know that I'm allergic to seafood, and most importantly, I don't feel anything with her. No connection, no recognition on an emotional level." Alex whistled. "This is beyond the pale. But then where is the real Emma, and who is this woman?" "That's what I need to find out. Alex, I need your help. Can you check the information about the new Dawn Clinic and the organization called Cerebrum?" "Of course," he nodded without hesitation. "I still maintain connections in the intelligence community. If these guys have left any traces, I'll find them." He was silent for a moment, then added, "James, what's the last thing you remember, before the clinic?" I concentrated, trying to break through the fog surrounding my memories. "A briefing with Cain, something about a new security system, it was. I don't know, maybe a month ago, or a year, damn hard to say." "Major Victor Cain," Alex suddenly became wary. "James, he's investigating your disappearance. Unofficial. The leadership ordered the case to be closed after they announced that you were dead, but Cain is a stubborn son of a bitch. If anyone can help us understand what's happening, it's him." I nodded, feeling the first wave of hope in a long time. "Contact him, but be careful. I'm not sure who can be trusted now." In the meantime, Alex handed me a small item. "Take this." It was a miniature GPS tracker with a listening function. "Install it on her phone. We'll find out where she goes, who she talks to." I squeezed the device in my fist, feeling a plan of action forming. "Let's meet tomorrow in my office," Alex said. "Look around, make sure you're not being followed. The address is the same, you should remember." "Thank you," I put my hand on his shoulder. "I knew I could count on you." "Always, brother," he smiled weakly. "Just be careful with this Emma. If she really is a spy, she can be dangerous." I nodded, knowing this better than anyone else. 2. Returning home, I found a note from Emma. She had gone to a session with a psychotherapist, and would be back in 3 hours, the perfect opportunity to search the house. I began methodically, room by room, moving books on shelves, tapping walls in search of cavities, checking floorboards for secret compartments. In the bedroom under the mattress, I found a Glock 19 pistol, brand new, without a single scratch. Not my usual choice of weapon, but nice to know it's here. The basement turned out to be the last place I hadn't searched yet. Going down the narrow staircase, I turned on the light. A typical basement: washing machine, dryer, shelves with tools and boxes. In the far corner, a metal rack filled with cans of paint and garden tools. Something about the arrangement of the rack caught my attention. It stood at a strange angle, too far from the wall. I came closer, examined the space behind it. At first glance, nothing special, just a bare wall. But when I ran my hand over the surface of the concrete, I felt a barely noticeable stream of air. Moving the rack aside, I discovered a small door skillfully mounted in the wall, without a visible lock or handle. I pressed on it, nothing. I knocked, a dull sound. Then, obeying my intuition, I ran my palm along the edge and something clicked under my fingers. The door smoothly slid aside, revealing a small hiding place. Inside were documents, a flash drive, and a battered notebook. The cover of the drive was marked, "Black Phantom, Top Secret." I took the notebook. Inside, columns of numbers, tables, charts, and on the last page, a note written in my handwriting. "Don't trust Emma, she is not who she says she is. Find Cain." I photographed the contents of the hiding place on my phone, took the flash drive and the note, leaving the rest of the documents in place. I carefully closed the hiding place and returned the rack to its original position. Going up the stairs, I felt a strange feeling, as if I had found a piece of the puzzle, but the picture still remained incomplete. 3. Interesting. Alex inserted the flash drive into a specially isolated laptop, not connected to the internet. All files are encrypted and encrypted well. We were sitting in his office, a small room in an old industrial building converted into an office center. Outside, a modest sign, AM Consulting. Inside, an impressive set of equipment for surveillance, data analysis, and hacking. Standard NSA encryption, I suggested, watching his work. "No, something more complex," Alex frowned, looking at the screen. "Three-level protocol with biometric binding. Damn, whoever created this didn't want outsiders reading it." He launched a decryption program, which began to iterate through possible combinations. "This will take time," he said, leaning back in his chair. "The good news is that some of the files are damaged but still accessible. Looks like someone tried to delete them but did it in a hurry." Half an hour later, the program produced the first results: fragments of decrypted text. "Operation Black Phantom approved at the highest level. Implementation of code fragments into the subconscious of agents. 5 carriers. Each contains 20% of the full code. Psychological implantation completed successfully." Implementing the code into the subconscious, Alex shook his head. "Sounds like science fiction." "Or like what the fake Emma was talking about," I remarked. "Secret code stored only in my memory." We continued to study the fragments. As the program decrypted more and more data, a picture emerged before us: a top-secret operation to create a new system of strategic weapons under the code name Damocles' Sword. Access to the system was divided into 5 parts, each of which was implanted into the subconscious of one agent. "Here, look," Alex pointed to a list. "Agent Carrier 3 J. Harper." "What about the others?" I leaned closer to the screen. "Agent 1 R. Turner, status, died under unexplained circumstances. 2 L. Chen, status, died under unexplained circumstances. 4 M. Rodriguez, status, missing. 5 K. Novik, status, died under unexplained circumstances." A chill ran down my spine. 3 are dead, 1 is missing, and I am supposedly dead, I summarized. "Coincidence? I don't think so." The last modification date of this file is a month ago, Alex noted, around the same time that you died. We continued searching and came across a mention of Dr. Simon Fisher, the same one who treated me at the New Dawn Clinic. According to the files, he was a key developer of the mental implantation technology. So this Fisher first implanted the code into your subconscious and then tried to extract it, Alex reasoned. Or maybe he works for both sides. Or he was forced to, I suggested. He seemed scared. Alex copied the decrypted data to a new, clean drive and gave it to me. I'll continue working on the remaining files, and you need to be more careful. If these people are really hunting for the code in your head. He didn't finish the phrase, but we both understood. My life hung by a thread. 4. The information from the Black Phantom files gave me no rest. I sat in Alex's car, parked 2 blocks from my house, and tried to connect the disparate facts into a single picture. Suddenly, an image flashed before my eyes, bright, clear, as if I were watching a movie on an internal screen. I saw myself in a cabinet with dark panels. Opposite, a man in military uniform with major's epaulettes. Next to him stood a woman, chestnut hair, intelligent eyes, the real Emma. After implantation, you will not remember this conversation, said the major. The code will become part of your mental structure. Even under torture, you will not be able to give it away because you do not consciously know it. The vision disappeared as suddenly as it appeared, leaving me disoriented and with a pulsating pain in my temples. Another flash, Emma hands me a small box. Happy 5th anniversary, darling. Inside, an elegant Swiss watch. I open the back cover. There is an engraving. Time does not heal but allows you to see the truth. Forever yours, E. I abruptly returned to reality. The watch, I really had such a watch. I clearly remembered its weight on my wrist, the familiar ticking of the mechanism. But now I didn't have it. Where could it be, if it wasn't found in the hiding place? The answer came by itself, a bank safe deposit box. Emma and I probably had a box for storing important documents and valuables. I called Alex. I need information about bank safe deposit boxes in my name, I said without preamble. Already working on it, he replied. You have a box in First National Bank on Madison Avenue, number 247. Access is biometric, fingerprint, and retina scan. How do you know? Came across an insurance policy in your financial documents. It mentioned the box. The devil is in the details, buddy. Do you think my biometrics still work? After all, I'm officially dead. Banks don't update databases that quickly, especially if there is no official request to close the box. It's worth a try. 5. First National Bank greeted me with marble columns and strict elegance. I put on sunglasses and a baseball cap, minimal camouflage in case of surveillance cameras. The storage manager, a middle-aged man with a neatly trimmed goatee, smiled politely. How can I help you, sir? Box 247, I said, taking off my glasses. In the name of James Harper. He checked the data on the computer, and his eyebrows crawled up in surprise. Strange. It's noted here that we should have received a notification about. He cut himself off, looking more closely at my face. I'm sorry, sir. Standard procedure, fingerprint and retina scan. I placed my finger on the scanner and leaned towards the retina scan device. A second of waiting, and the system gave confirmation. Everything is in order, Mr. Harper. The manager seemed no less surprised than me. Please come with me. In the private room for working with boxes, I opened the safe and found a waterproof container. Inside, documents, a spare passport in the name of David West, a wad of cash in different currencies, and finally, the watch. I took it in my hands, feeling the familiar weight. I turned it over, opened the back cover. The engraving was exactly as it was in my vision, but what surprised me more, there was a hidden compartment in the cover, and in it, a microchip and a tiny note. If you are reading this, then Plan B is activated. Call Cain at the number you know by heart. Code Archimedes 17. I didn't remember any of Cain's numbers, but something told me that it was somewhere in the depths of my consciousness, like the code they were trying to extract from my memory. Putting everything back into the container, except for the watch and the note, I left the bank, feeling that I had come one step closer to solving the puzzle. 6. Returning home, I carefully installed the tracker on Emma's phone while she was taking a shower. Then I set up the app on my phone to track her movements. For the next 2 days, I played the role of a disoriented person trying to restore memory. I went with her to places where we were supposedly happy, listened to stories about our life together. And all this time I was watching her. On the 3rd day, the app showed that she was heading to an area of abandoned warehouses on the outskirts of the city, a place she didn't mention in our conversations. I followed her at a safe distance, using surveillance skills honed by years of work in intelligence. She parked near a dilapidated industrial complex, surrounded by a fence with barbed wire. A sign read, "East Coast Chemical Research, Private Property." The guard at the gate let her in without questions. She entered the building through a side entrance. I walked around the complex, looking for an observation point. The roof of a neighboring abandoned warehouse turned out to be the ideal position. With the help of binoculars borrowed from Alex, I saw that the building was much more modern than it seemed from the outside. Surveillance cameras, access card readers, armed guards, all the signs of a serious secret facility. 3 hours later, Emma left the building accompanied by an elderly woman with gray hair pulled back in a strict bun. They were arguing hotly about something, but I was too far away to hear. I took a few photos on my phone, especially of the elderly woman. Something in her imperious posture, in the cold, calculating expression on her face, made me think she was in charge here. When they parted, I watched the building for another hour or so, noting the guard changes, patrol routes, and camera locations. If this was Cerebrum's base, it was well protected. Just as I was about to leave, I noticed an unmarked van pull up to the back entrance. A woman was led out of it with a bag over her head, escorted by 2 guards. As they passed under a lamppost, the bag slipped for a moment and I saw her face. My heart skipped a beat. Despite the distance, despite the fact that she looked exhausted and drained, I recognized her. The real Emma, my wife. She was alive, and she was a prisoner of Cerebrum. All the way home I thought about what I had seen, planning my next steps. I needed to rescue Emma, but that required help, and I only knew one person powerful and loyal enough to risk everything for this mission, Major Victor Cain. All that remained was to remember his damn phone number, hidden somewhere in the depths of my damaged memory. Chapter 3. SHADOWS and Aria Felicitions. 1. The black SUV with tinted windows appeared out of nowhere. Just now the road was empty, and suddenly it appeared in front of my hood, blocking the way. A classic interception technique. I had used it myself dozens of times. My hands automatically reached for the gun hidden under my jacket. The SUV door swung open, and a large man in a civilian suit stepped out. Despite the lack of uniform, his military bearing was obvious. I instinctively tensed, preparing for confrontation, but something in his face made me freeze. "Harper," he said quietly, looking around. "Get in the car, quick." The voice. I would recognize that voice out of 1,000. Low, commanding, with a barely noticeable Texan accent. "Major Cain." He nodded, then with a quick motion opened the back door. "No time, you're being watched." I glanced around the street, no one suspicious, but my intuition told me Cain was right. I slipped into the back seat of the SUV. Cain sat next to me, slamming the door. The driver, a young man with a military haircut, immediately drove off. Sorry for the dramatics. Cain ran his hand over his short, graying hair. But the situation is worse than you can imagine. I carefully studied his face. The same harsh features, the same penetrating gaze as in my fragmented memories. But new wrinkles had appeared, deep shadows under his eyes. The last month had clearly been difficult for him. Officially, you're a traitor, Harper, he continued, as the SUV merged into traffic. The government believes you voluntarily surrendered to Cerebrum and gave them the codes, and your death was supposedly a cover for desertion. What? It was so absurd that I couldn't help but smirk. Who would believe that? Everyone who needed to believe it believed it. Cain didn't share my amusement. After the discovery of your wrecked car, the commission studied your latest contacts, financial transactions. Someone went to great lengths to create the impression that you had been recruited by Cerebrum several months ago. The SUV turned onto a quiet street, then again and again, a classic surveillance check. But you didn't believe it. It wasn't a question but an assertion. I've known you for 10 years, James. Cain looked me straight in the eye. You would rather die than betray your country. That's why I organized an unofficial investigation, assembled a small team of people I can trust. And what did you find out? That Cerebrum is not just a private organization engaged in neurotechnologies. It's the successor to a Soviet project on mind control, revived after the collapse of the USSR. It's headed by a woman named Elena Solovyeva, a former scientist from the Zarya program. I saw her. I told him about following Emma and about the gray-haired woman. And I saw the real Emma. She's alive, Cain. They're holding her there. Cain nodded, as if this confirmed his suspicions. Our sources indicate that Cerebrum's main base is disguised as the Horizon Psychiatric Clinic 50 miles from here. If your wife is really with them, then she's there. I need to save her. I felt a cold fury rise inside me, that particular kind of anger that doesn't cloud the mind, but on the contrary clarifies it. That's why I'm here. Cain took out a tablet from his inner pocket. We have a plan, but first you need to know the full picture. Cerebrum has already collected 4 out of 5 fragments of the Damocles sword code. They extracted 3 from the memories of the killed agents, 1 they received from a traitor. They kidnapped you for the 5th fragment, but something went wrong. Dr. Fisher, I guessed. He sabotaged the extraction procedure. Most likely. Fisher is a leading expert in neurotechnologies, but he works for Cerebrum under duress. They're holding his daughter hostage. The SUV stopped near a small motel on the outskirts. It's safe here. We often change meeting places, Cain explained. James, we are ready to help you save Emma and stop Cerebrum, but time is short. Solovyeva is close to activating Damocles' sword. What is this system? I asked, getting out of the car. How dangerous is it? Cain's face became even gloomier. Dangerous enough to change the balance of power in the world. Only a few people know the details, but according to our data, this is a technology that allows, through satellites, to influence the neural processes of the population of entire regions. Mind control on a massive scale, I muttered. Sounds like a nightmare. Exactly, Cain put his hand on my shoulder. And you, James, are possibly the only one who can stop this nightmare. 2. He's watching the water, but he doesn't see it, I whispered, looking at the ceiling of the bedroom. The number is infinite, like a spiral in a shell. 17, 42, 39, 88, 23. Emma raised her head from the book she was reading, sitting in a chair by the window. What did you say? Her voice sounded poorly concealed interest. Just strange images in my head. I rubbed my temples, feigning confusion. Numbers, phrases, I don't know what it means. She put down the book and approached the bed on which I was lying. Her movements felt the caution of a predator who smelled prey. That's a good sign, she said, sitting on the edge. The memory is beginning to return. Tell me more. Her eyes shone with greedy interest, too greedy for a loving wife. The images are blurry, I continued my game. Some kind of cabinet, people in military uniform, numbers on the screen, and the phrase, Archimedes 17 constantly pops up. At the mention of the code phrase, her pupils dilated. I noticed her right hand involuntarily twitching toward her pocket, where her phone lay. Sounds significant, she tried to speak casually, but I felt her tension. Maybe it has to do with your work. Maybe, I paused. Strangely, it seems I remember some kind of sequence. 7392461. This was a random combination of numbers, part of a false code created by Cain's team. Emma listened so attentively that she almost didn't breathe. Then something like, "The key is in the shield of Perseus," I added, including elements of ancient Greek mythology and the legend to make the story more believable. "James, that's amazing." She squeezed my hand with fake enthusiasm. "I think your memory is recovering faster than we thought." "I hope so," I gave a weary smile. "It's exhausting, these flashes. They're so bright, but then they disappear again." "You need to rest," she got up. "I'll make dinner. Maybe we'll watch a movie tonight, something light." As soon as she left the room, I checked the tracking app. If my calculations were correct, in about an hour she would find an excuse to leave the house and pass the information she had received on to her handlers. And so it happened. After dinner, she announced that she had to stop by the pharmacy for my medicine. A perfect excuse, caring for my health in a short absence that couldn't be challenged. When the door closed behind her, I immediately contacted Cain through a secure channel. "The bait has been swallowed," I reported. "She is heading to her handlers." "Excellent," Cain's voice sounded pleased. "My people will follow her. This will give us additional information about their movements and contacts." The plan was working. We were using Emma as an unwitting informant, letting her think she was in control of the situation, and was successfully extracting fragments of the code from me. But the game was getting more and more dangerous. The more memories I supposedly recovered, the more valuable I became to Cerebrum, and the greater the risk that they would decide to return me to the clinic for more radical information extraction measures. Time was running out. We had to act faster. 3. I chose the moment for the confrontation carefully. Evening, dim lighting, a glass of wine, creating an illusion of relaxation. I was sitting in a chair in the living room when she returned home. "How was the pharmacy?" I asked casually. "Did you find my medicine?" "Yes, everything is in order." She took the bag with the pills out of her purse and placed it on the table. "Interesting." I took a sip of wine. "And why were you in the abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of the city?" She froze, her hand, reaching for the switch, remained suspended in the air. In the ensuing silence, I could clearly hear the ticking of the clock. "What?" Her voice sounded naturally surprised. "I don't understand what you're talking about." I slowly placed the glass on the table next to the chair and turned on the recording on the phone. Her own voice, speaking Russian, filled the room. Even without understanding the language, it was obvious that it was a report to someone higher up. "Who are you?" I asked calmly. "And where is the real Emma?" She glanced at the door, assessing the distance and her chances of escape. I shook my head. "It's not worth it. There are people outside who really want to talk to you." It was a bluff. There were no people outside, but she didn't know that. To my surprise, she didn't run away and didn't try to attack me. Instead, her shoulders dropped, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from them. She slowly lowered herself into the chair opposite me. "When did you realize?" she asked, and in her voice I heard new notes, weariness and something like relief. "From the very beginning," I replied. "Too many inconsistencies, allergy to seafood, Russian language, uncertainty about the location of switches in a house where you supposedly lived for 7 years." She nodded, as if assessing my observation skills. "My real name is Lauren Gray," she said after a pause. "Or it was, until Cerebrum turned me into Emma Harper. How did they do that? Plastic surgery, psychological programming, implants with information activated by certain triggers, she spoke matter-of-factly, without emotion. I studied every detail of your wife's life, from the first kiss to her favorite color and childhood traumas. Why? This question had been tormenting me from the very beginning. Why such complexity? Initially, the plan was simple: to kidnap you, extract the code, eliminate you, she shrugged. But something went wrong. Fisher sabotaged the procedure. Instead of selectively erasing specific memories, you lost all memory of your wife. Solovyeva decided to change tactics, to return you to your familiar environment, but with a fake wife who would help to recover fragments of the code naturally. And the real Emma? Alive, Lauren answered briefly. She's being held in Cerebrum's main center. Solovyeva believes she may be useful, to put pressure on you. I carefully studied her face. Something in her behavior had changed. The fake warmth, the contrived concern had disappeared. Before me sat a professional talking to another professional. Why are you telling me all this? I asked. You do understand that now I won't let you go. She raised her eyes to me, and in them I saw something unexpected: sincerity. Because I'm tired, James. Tired of being someone else's shadow, she took a deep breath. And because something happened this month that Solovyeva didn't foresee, I started to feel, really. To feel what? Everything: guilt, fear, and, she hesitated, something for you, not what was programmed but real. I didn't expect such a turn of events. It could be another manipulation, of course. But something in her look, in the tone of her voice, seemed genuine. I propose a deal, Lauren suddenly said. I will help you save the real Emma and stop Cerebrum. In exchange, you will help me get a new identity and protection from Solovyeva. It sounded too good to be true, but in our situation, any help was valuable. Why should I trust you? I asked directly. You shouldn't, she shrugged. But you don't have a choice. I know the access codes, the location of the cameras, the security guard shift schedules. Without my help, you won't penetrate the center. She was right, and if it was a trap, well, it was a risk worth taking to save Emma. Okay, I nodded, but one wrong step and the deal is off. Fair enough, she smiled weakly. And James, forgive me for everything. This is suicide, Cain shook his head, examining the penetration scheme proposed by Lauren. Security systems, biometric control. This isn't just a clinic, it's a fortress. We gathered in Cain's safe house, a small cottage in the suburbs, surrounded by forest. Besides the three of us, there were 4 more operatives from Cain's secret group, all former Special Forces soldiers, battle-tested. That's why we need someone from the inside. Lauren tapped the scheme with her finger. I can provide you with access. I still have a pass and codes. Which are probably already canceled, objected one of Cain's people, a stocky man with a scar across his cheek. They're not fools. As soon as you didn't come back, they realized something was wrong. Not necessarily, Lauren shook her head. Solovyeva is paranoid, but she is also arrogant. She believes that her psychological programming is impeccable. According to protocol, I have 48 hours of autonomous operation before I have to contact or return to base. And how many of those 48 hours are left? I asked. About 30, she looked at her watch. Enough to prepare and break in. Cain leaned over the scheme, studying it more closely. Let's say you lead us inside. What's next? Where are they holding Emma? Lauren pointed to a remote section in the East Wing. Here, Sector D, increased security for prisoners of particular importance. Cameras, motion sensors, armed guards. Number of guards? I asked. At least 6, 2 at the entrance to the sector, 2 patrol the corridors, 2 more in the observation room. What about the rest of the security of the complex? Total strength, about 30 people divided into 3 shifts. Lauren drew patrol routes on the scheme. The main problem is the security system. Everything is connected to the central console. If an alarm goes off, all doors automatically lock. Can the system be disabled? Cain rubbed his chin. Completely no. But I can create a local malfunction in Sector D, which will give you about 5 minutes before the backup systems kick in. We continued to discuss the details of the plan for the next several hours. Lauren provided all the necessary information without hesitation: access codes, weaknesses in the security system, habits of the guards. Her knowledge was impressive and, more importantly, seemed sincere. The plan we developed was risky, but feasible. Lauren will gain access to the auxiliary security system and disable the cameras in Sector D. The team will split up. The main group will create a diversion in the West Wing, diverting the attention of the guards, while I and 2 operatives will break into the East Wing to free Emma. There is one more detail that you need to know, Lauren said when we finished with the main part of the plan. Solovyeva plans to arrive at the center tomorrow evening for the final phase of extracting the code from the real Emma's memory. After that, Emma will become unnecessary. This news changed our schedule. We couldn't wait. The operation was scheduled for the next night. If everything goes according to plan, we'll go in and out in 30 minutes, Cain summarized. But be prepared for everything to go wrong. It always does. I met Lauren's gaze. Her eyes showed determination, but there was something else in them: fear, uncertainty, or maybe a hidden motive that I couldn't decipher. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I asked her later when we were alone. "Do you understand that after this there will be no turning back?" "I lost my way back a long time ago, James," she replied quietly. "Even before I was turned into your wife. I just want to finish this and maybe start something new." I didn't know what to tell her. Part of me still didn't trust her completely, but another part understood her desire to get rid of the past, to start with a clean slate. Wasn't that what I wanted myself? 5. "Do you have everything you need?" Alex checked the equipment in his office. "Weapons, communication, medicine." "Everything on the list." I fastened the tactical vest under my jacket. Cain provided us with everything we needed. Alex nodded, but I noticed the anxiety on his face. He had checked the time on his watch 3 times in the last 5 minutes. "Something wrong?" I asked directly. "No, just," he hesitated. "This is a dangerous mission, James. I'm worried." "You don't have to participate," I reminded him. "This isn't your fight." "You're my friend," he put his hand on my shoulder. "Of course it's my fight." Something in his behavior bothered me. Nervousness, absent-mindedness, these constant glances at his watch. This wasn't the Alex I knew, or perhaps not the one I remembered. "Alex," I started cautiously, "if you know something that might affect the operation." "No," he replied too quickly. "No, everything's fine, just nervous." I decided to change the subject. "How's the decryption of the remaining Black Phantom files coming along?" Slowly, he turned away towards the computer. "The encryption's complex, but I'm making progress. If we have time after the operation, I'll show you what I've found." "If we have time," I echoed. We both knew tonight could be the last for either of us. An operation to infiltrate a heavily guarded facility with minimal prep and limited resources was always a gamble. "James," Alex said suddenly, "whatever happens tonight, forgive me if you can." I looked at him surprised. "For what?" "For everything." He averted his gaze. "Sometimes we make choices we later regret, but we don't always get the chance to fix our mistakes." It sounded like a farewell, or a confession, but before I could ask another question, my phone rang. Cain was calling, saying it was time to move out. "Take care of yourself," Alex said, giving me a firm goodbye hug. "And good luck." I returned the hug, but a nagging feeling settled within me. Something wasn't right with Alex, and I was afraid I'd find out what it was far too late. 6. The night was moonless, perfect conditions for our operation. Two vans, disguised as maintenance vehicles, stopped half a mile from the Horizon Clinic. From here, we had to proceed on foot to avoid drawing attention. Comms checked, weapons ready, Cain assessed our group. Remember the plan. Alpha Team creates a diversion in the West Wing. Beta Team rescues the hostage. Only contact in case of extreme emergency. I rechecked my gear. Pistol with suppressor, knife, radio with secure channel, miniature lockpicking kit. Lauren, dressed in a clinic employee uniform, seemed calm, but I noticed her hands were trembling. "You can still back out," I told her quietly. "No, I can't," she shook her head. "I have to do this." We split up. Lauren headed for the main entrance, while the rest of us surrounded the complex, taking up our positions according to plan. "Fox is in the henhouse," Cain's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Stand by." 10 minutes stretched on forever. I hid in the shadows of the trees, observing the movements of the guards on the perimeter. Two men with automatic weapons patrolled the fence, stopping every 100 yards to scan the area. "Fox is in position," Lauren's voice finally came. "Initiating security system shutdown in Sector D. You have 5 minutes from the signal." "Roger that," Cain replied. "Teams, prepare to move." I took a deep breath, rechecked my weapon. Thoughts of Emma flooded my mind, fueling my resolve. She was in there, waiting to be rescued. My real wife, the woman I barely remembered but had sworn to protect. "Sector D is down," Lauren reported. "Go." Alpha Team immediately activated smoke grenades near the West Wing. The sound of a siren ripped through the night silence. An evacuation was underway. The perimeter guards rushed towards the source of the alarm, leaving the eastern side open. Beta Team and I quickly advanced towards a service entrance. Lauren was supposed to leave it unlocked. The door yielded without resistance. Inside, muted chaos reigned. Emergency lights flashed. Personnel hurried toward the exits, following evacuation protocol. We moved through the corridors, trying to blend in with the general flow. The plan was working until it didn't. In a side corridor, we encountered an unscheduled patrol, 3 guards heading our way. Seeing us, they immediately knew we weren't staff. "Halt!" one of them shouted, raising his weapon. There was no time to hesitate. I fired first. The suppressor muffled the sound to a quiet pop. The guard fell. The other 2 opened fire, but we had already scattered, using the corridor's pillars for cover. The firefight was brief and brutal. One of our men took a bullet in the shoulder, but all 3 guards were neutralized. "Keep moving," I commanded, reloading my pistol. "We've got 3 minutes before the backup systems activate." We quickened our pace. The corridors blurred into one endless labyrinth, but I followed the layout precisely from memory. Turn left, then right twice, down the stairs. And then suddenly, in the middle of another corridor, a wave of memories washed over me. A vivid, powerful flash. I had been here before. Not in this part of the building, but in this complex. I remembered the cold walls, the sterile smell of antiseptic, the muffled hum of the ventilation system. Emma sat opposite me, her eyes full of worry. "James, this is dangerous. They're implanting something in your mind, something that could change you." I hugged her, promising everything would be okay, that it was for the good of the country, for the sake of overall security. She didn't believe me. Or rather, she didn't believe them, the people in white coats who talked about temporary memory mapping and neurocognitive anchors. The memory vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving me disoriented. But there was no time to dwell. We had already reached Sector D. The doors that should have been unlocked were indeed open. Lauren hadn't failed. "Go," I commanded, and we burst into the high-security holding sector, ready for anything. The corridor with the cells was empty. Personnel were evacuating, and the guards had been diverted. We quickly checked each cell through the observation windows. And then I saw her. In the last cell, connected to some strange apparatus, electrodes attached to her temples, exhausted with sunken eyes but alive. My real wife, Emma. Chapter 4, Shattered Mirror. 1. The cell door gave way unexpectedly easily. Emma lay motionless, eyes closed, her breathing barely perceptible. Electrodes on her temples connected to a tangle of wires leading to a machine resembling an advanced MRI scanner. The monitors next to it showed brain activity, rhythmic spikes against a background of flat lines. I rushed to her, carefully removing the electrodes. "Emma," I whispered, touching her face. "Emma, it's me, James." Her eyelids fluttered, then slowly lifted. The unfocused gaze gradually cleared. She looked at me, first confused, then with growing recognition. "James," her voice was weak, hoarse from long silence. "Is it really you?" "Yes, it's me." I gently helped her sit up. "We've come to get you out of here." She cupped my face in her trembling hands, peering as if not believing her eyes. "They said you betrayed me, showed me pictures, tried to make me believe." "It's all a lie," I pressed her close. "But we need to leave now. Can you walk?" She nodded, trying to stand, but her legs buckled. One of the operatives caught her. "I'll carry her," he said. "Commander, we need to hurry. Backup systems will be online in a minute." We stepped out into the corridor, where the third member of our group was waiting. At that moment, Lauren appeared from a side passage, her face tense. "You made it," she exhaled, then turned her gaze to Emma. It was a surreal moment, two women with identical faces staring at each other. The original and the copy, the real and the fake. Emma's eyes widened. "What is this?" she whispered. "Who?" "I'll explain later," I said. "Right now we need to get out." We moved towards the exit along a predetermined route. Lauren led the way, checking the path. Everything was going according to plan, until we reached the main corridor leading to the exit. There an ambush awaited us. Alex stood in the center of the corridor, surrounded by guards. Next to him, kneeling with his hands tied behind his back, was Cain, bloody. His face was beaten, blood trickled from a wound on his chest. "James," Alex smiled, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "You've always been predictable. Heroism is your Achilles heel." The world around me slowed down. An icy understanding spread inside. Alex, my friend, the man I trusted, had betrayed me. "Why?" was all I could manage. "Nothing personal," he shrugged. "Just business. Cerebrum pays well, and I've never been a hero unlike you." Cain tried to say something, but one of the guards hit him on the head with the butt of his rifle. "You can surrender now," Alex continued, "and no one else will get hurt, or we can do this the hard way." I quickly assessed the situation. The three of us, not counting the weakened Emma, against Alex and 6 armed guards. The odds were not in our favor. Lauren suddenly stepped forward. "Alex, I can explain," she said, pretending that there had been a misunderstanding on our side. "I brought them here on Solovieva's orders. It was a trap." Alex frowned, not expecting such a turn. "What other order? I wasn't told anything about." At that moment, Lauren made an imperceptible move and lunged at Alex. A brutal struggle ensued. She moved with unexpected speed and precision, using obviously professional hand-to-hand combat techniques. We seized the second of confusion and opened fire. The corridor filled with the roar of gunfire, the cries of the wounded mixed with commands. I rushed to Cain, simultaneously covering Emma with fire, whom our operative dragged behind a pillar. Cain was alive, but unconscious and losing a lot of blood. "We need to go," I shouted. "Lauren." She was still fighting Alex. Alex drew a knife and managed to wound Lauren in the shoulder before she knocked him back against the wall and stunned him with a powerful blow. "Let's go." She rushed towards us, pressing the wound on her shoulder. We broke through the guard cordon, leaving behind bodies and the moans of the wounded. Cain was carried by the second operative, while the first supported Emma. "Emergency exit," Lauren gasped, pointing to an inconspicuous door at the end of the corridor. Faster. 2. The emergency exit led into an underground service tunnel. We ran through the twilight, orienting ourselves by the dim emergency lights. Behind us were gunshots and shouts. The chase was in full swing. Turn right here, Lauren pointed to a side branch. There should be an elevator to the upper level. We turned and found ourselves in a spacious laboratory complex. White walls, glass partitions, flickering computer screens. And in the middle of all this, the familiar figure of a man in a white coat. Dr. Fisher stood at his desk, his hands frozen over the keyboard. Seeing us, he didn't look surprised, more resigned. "I knew you'd be back, Captain Harper," he said, taking off his glasses. "I was hopping for it." "Dr. Fisher," I kept him at gunpoint. "What the hell is going on here?" No time for long explanations.